I'm like so bright. I have to shut the shade. Hold on. How did you figure it out, Zoe?
I downloaded it in a different like application. So like I downloaded Excel to my desktop.
Oh,
And so then when I went to open the new like files that you sent for everyone, it
yeah.
opened in Excel and there were all of the little
Yay.
application things.
Everything we needed.
Yes, so I'm so happy that that is off my shoulders now.
Yeah.
Well,
That's terrific. I wonder if we need to just mention that to the people that were also using that same sort of version that downloaded onto the desktop. Darren, this might apply to you. You were using a downloaded or a different version of Excel, right?
Yes, I was.
So Zoe was struggling with it like you were. She just downloaded it onto her desktop. We weren't sure if that was something you had done, but it resolved all her problems. It looks like normal Excel now.
Oh, really? I have it as in my bookmark, so let me go try that.
Yeah.
yeah, because that's how I used it too, but
Yeah.
it didn't work. Because I also had a hard time uploading the data spreadsheets because it was a different, it only accepts certain like what is it called? Like they're not like links, but only accepts certain
Like file types, like
yeah.
.xls.
And so whenever I would try to open them or like click and drag them over, it said like does not support. So it didn't do that this time.
Okay, let me go try that.
Okay. We don't need Excel today. Can you believe it? It's like the most exciting thing.
Oh, thank God.
Dang, once I figured it out, right?
And I think we're going to be done early because it's such a beautiful day and you should go outside and enjoy it. So good stuff. Yeah, if anyone needs to hire any lawn maintenance, my dog is available. I would give him to you for free for a period of time. My entire front yard is a collection of sticks that are reach out to like the length of his lead. So if you need someone to pile sticks in one area, he's your man or dog. Oh man, it's gorgeous out though. I was glad to be out there today. Well, all right. I was telling everybody we're gonna be done. My guess is within the hour. So that's
what
I know.
Maybe I can get a nap in before work. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is good news.
Yes, yes. Okay, so now I see smiles. So firstly, I want to share screen and talk to you guys about the lab data, which has been like, oh man, Elliot found that what we posted or what I posted for the thing to check was different from what you guys had worked up. And I think it's a matter of some of the old data from, because we use the same template and the TA just kind of uploads the new data from this semester. I think some of it still carried over, it wasn't updated. So my apologies on that. I did go back and fix it and everything seems to make a lot more sense. So what I wanted to call your attention to was, if you were to go to, can you guys see Excel, sorry, the Moodle site?
Yes.
Okay. If you were to go back to our, optimal foraging area, just a reminder, and a lot of you, I saw this, it was awesome. You pulled in the classic paper in that, intro paragraph, which was terrific. If you were to scroll down to that central area where the data are located, this cross check, when you click on it, you're going to get something that pops up that looks like this. And as I keep mentioning, really important to somebody, let's see, hold on. That was an unknown iPhone. Whose iPhone is that? iPhone user, who is that? Because I don't want to exit you out of our Zoom if I don't know who you are. The person that joined with an iPhone, can someone let me know who that is? All right, well,
Maybe they don't know who they are.
They just said in the chat, it's Andrew.
okay, Andrew, yes, you panic me. Again, that Zoom bomber incident that I had, okay. So anyways, if you open it up directly, it's gonna look like this, and then you're gonna see these graphs and you're gonna be like, wait a minute, Danielle, that's totally not how we format it, right? We've got mean calories per forager over here. We don't even have it on our y-axis. There's no error bars, right? But as soon as you hit this download, it's gonna bring it into Excel and it'll look like this. Okay, and everything will be as it should, okay? It's gonna be, you know, formatted appropriately. Now, what I wanted to mention is that there was an issue, and this is what I tried to explain. There was an issue with a couple of the lines, you know, the data actually weren't even like yours. That's why I thought they were from somebody else in the predation, which then made our, you know, 1, 2, 3 predators and the all predator bars look different. And I had talked to you guys last week when we made the graph that normally the more predators you add in, the less food you get because you're vigilant, right? Like you're looking around and you're not eating as much and you're panicked and maybe you lose all your chips. And so after that glitch was fixed, we see that exact trend. So it's like perfect response. It's exactly what we would expect. And in general, the all predators, if we clumped it all together and didn't really pull it apart, it's kind of, you know, midway between all of those options. It's like the average of all those options. So your data, and I mentioned this before, your data actually are probably one of the closest semesters to having like casebook what it should look like after this change was made. Learning was the highest, right? Because we should know that. Of the competition, the one where you have direct fighting was lower. Of your predation, the one where you added the most predators, you had the least food, right? Weather was harsh on everybody. So there's like a biological way to explain all these trends in this discussion, right? And that's, I think, just, you know, perfect for you to see. And so in this graph, like I've mentioned, this is where you're looking at the stressor and how that stressor impacted the forager. And so you can speak to those trends, and I had mentioned speaking to them in reference to sort of your control or like the baseline, which was the optimal. So the optimal versus like what's going on with predators, the optimal versus what's going on with the 2 competitors, the optimal versus harsh weather, optimal versus scavenging, optimal versus learning. That's a good way to state your trends text in your results. For this graph, we're looking at your strategy, right? The higher your bar, the more likely you were a specialist, picking up maybe the blue chips, the ones that had greater value. The lower, the more likely you were acting more like a generalist. So that one, you know, a couple sentences, you know, you can speak that trend, right? Like all of them range between, I'd say like, and you can go up and you can look, right? They range between the lowest of 27 and the highest of 41, right? So there's a strict range, and you could speak to the ones that behave more like a specialist versus the ones that are more like a generalist. You can explain why you think that might happen in the discussion, but in the results, you would just state that. Okay, so again, my apologies. And I mentioned that, you know, for those that were having the Excel trouble, ideally, we want you to paste this, and this into the results section that you guys were working on that's due later tonight. But if you are having that issue with Excel, you could go to back to that Moodle site, and over to the right here, I had put them in a Word document. But again, if you click on that, it's going to open and it's going to look like this. You'll be like, Danielle, where are these graphs, right? It's just, I don't understand why the viewer cut some of this stuff off. So if you download it with the download button on the right, it shows up. Okay, so I pasted those updated graphs. I pasted your updated, why is it missing the rest of them? Did you guys notice that too? Huh. Well, it's back over in the Excel sheet. Learning and scavenging seems like it truncated right there. But, you know, grab the graphs. I've got, you know, showing you your figure legends right below. I've got your trend statement that speaks to the ANOVA that was done right above it. And then you can lead in with your this versus these 3, this versus those 2, right? just statement, okay? So I know that the, results discussion abstract is due later today. If anybody did need an extra day, that's fine. I'm probably going to just start grading them and just, keep going with them. At this point, you guys have all gotten feedback from me on part 1, at least those who have submitted it. And I sent it to you in 2 different formats. So one was a PDF that if you opened, you could see the comments on the right. And then one was a Word document. And again, for those that have like the Excel issue, you may have a Word issue as well, okay? Remember at the very beginning of class, we did the writing session and we had talked about track changes. So I wanted to just bring that up again. If you were to go back to the science writing, I have a very brief video of how to address it. But I wanted to kind of show you, if you opened in Word, an example, this is an example, but if you opened one of your papers, your revision process is going to be so much easier, right? If you open it in Word, and you can see this review tab up here, we've got an accept and a reject option, right? And so anytime you see red words with an underline, that means I've added it in. So you can, highlight it, right click it, and accept the insertion, right? So if all of this looks good to you, right, you can right click and accept the insertion and it goes away, okay? If there's a red line through the middle of it, I've deleted a sentence of yours, okay? Same deal, you can click on it, right click, and accept the deletion and it goes away. So you can go through the Word document using this track changes. Again, I'm in the review tab and, right click, accept, accept, accept. I would not recommend going through, because you can choose accept all changes, because sometimes I like make a note, right? Or sometimes I write things like this, or blah, blah, blah as a placeholder for you. So if you accepted it all, that's still going to be in there. So you would probably want to address that and then delete it. You can right click and reject that and it goes away, okay? Now to deal with all these comments in the side, right, you can click and make them bigger and see what I'm saying. You can, read it, address it if you are planning to, and then right click and delete the comment and it goes away and you can work your way all the way through. Okay, so again, most of these have been very solid. I'm really impressed with the quality of the draft. And I think you're in really good shape heading into the revision, which isn't due for quite a while. But I wanted to just, remind you guys about track changes, an easier way for you to address that. Okay, any questions on that? So if you don't have Word, you could access it via remote lab like we have in the past with Excel, or you could go into a computer lab, download that Word document onto the desktop and work it that way, because all the computer labs should have Word as well. Okay, all right, we're good. All right, I promised you about an hour, so let's do this. And again, just a reminder, some of those articles that I thought would be helpful to you are just down at the bottom of that optimal foraging area, okay? So no questions on the writing? We're just gonna keep moving forward with it? Okay. All right, I want to bring us to the overview area for lionfish, okay? And they're beautiful. I don't know if you guys have seen them in aquaria, but they're really beautiful. And I want to remind you, the assignment that you've got today is really just like plugging in a couple of things into a simulator. So like changing the R, changing the N, reporting what the new N is, reporting what the DNDT is. It spits it all out for you, and filling it into this Word document. And then dropping it into the Dropbox. Okay, so just bear those things in mind. Okay, so I'm going to click on the overview page. It's going to bring us to here. And I wanted to talk about the lionfish. So, we can discuss invasive species, but really they're a population that is growing kind of in an exponential fashion. And you're going to get a chance to play around with some data. We're talking about the red lionfish. And if we click on this read button, you're going to get to see a really nice picture of them. And you'll note that they, you know, came over, I think it was in the 80s, mid 80s, that they came over. They're kind of an Indo-Pacific organism. That's where they originated, and they were brought over in the aquarium trade because they're such a beautiful kind of tropical fish. They were brought over, and you know, people will rear them, and then they're like tired of it. Just this happens with turtles a lot too, and lately we've learned about the Burmese pythons as well. And so they just release them, right? And they didn't realize that it would be just the right conditions and they would have explosive growth. And so they're causing a lot of havoc. And so they're nocturnal organisms. They have all of these crazy cool adaptations, right? These fins have spines, and the spines are used in defense and capture for feeding and whatnot. They release a neuromuscular toxin, which pretty much like stuns the prey organism, and then a neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. And with that, they're then able, you know, the prey item is, you know, like floundering, they're able to then kind of corner them into a spot where they can attack them, and they're really good predators. Nothing really wants to eat them as a result of all of those strategies that we just talked about. So let's take a listen. Well, that one wasn't all that exciting. For whatever reason, I thought that they were going to be talking, but it's my second one that does that. But anyways, they talk about them being non-native. They talk about their role. They like to hang out on coral reefs, and so they tend to negatively impact the local coral reef fish. Where they were from, they are not listed as a conservation threat, but they do mention that, you know, as climate changes, their numbers may be impacted. Again, they warn you of those toxins and so on. And they're very kind of slow in their hunt because that's why they have that camouflage. But once they attack, they're very effective predators. There's a cool map, an interactive map that I have right here if you guys wanted to kind of play around with it down the line. When you click on it, you can see that the distribution of them, wow, this is surprising to me. I feel like this just popped up in the last year. I knew of them being down in the South, that, you know, they were originally kind of spotted in Florida, a couple in North Carolina, kind of moving up the coast, but I did not notice that they had made their way up towards kind of Cape Cod area. So they're, you know, they've been spotted. And so you can report a sighting just like you can nowadays with your smartphone. You can go to these interactive websites or install an app that will allow you to note that they are there and help mapping these invasive species and help with public safety too, right? A lot of people that are out at the beach in Cape Cod will have a shark tracking app, and they'll get an alert if a shark is noted in the vicinity of where they are. So just kind of cool to see, you know, their distribution, and that's interactive. And yeah, this is the one I wanted us to watch together.
Florida's southern coast is one of the most popular dive spots in the world. Home to the only tropical coral reef in the continental United States. Hundreds of species of fish live along this reef system. But the fish here are in danger because of a foreign predator that's been devouring them, lionfish. Eric Nelson is an avid scuba diver who hunts lionfish up to 130 feet below the surface of the Atlantic Ocean.
They can eat 90% of their body weight every day in fish. In fact, we have pictures of fish, lionfish that have been gutted, and they have 50 small fish inside of them.
Nelson and his teammates are competing in a lionfish derby off the coast of Boca Raton, Florida. It's a competition to catch as many lionfish as possible before sunset.
It's a pretty obvious spot. It's on the outside edge. It's a little cave.
The boat's captain, Paul Varian, is a commercial fisherman who's been diving these waters for 16 years.
I saw my first lionfish 7, 8 years ago, maybe. I remember going, "Oh wow, what's that? That's crazy," you know. And then now it's forever.
Lionfish are native to the South Pacific and the Indian Ocean, and there are different theories about how they came to inhabit Atlantic waters. The leading theory is that a few home aquarium owners set some lionfish free in the ocean in the 1980s, and the fish rapidly reproduced. Several scientific studies have traced the DNA for the entire lionfish population in the Atlantic back to a small group of fish. When lionfish invade a reef, they can reduce the population of fish they eat by 65% over 2 years, according to a study conducted in the Bahamas. How much of a problem are lionfish to the reefs in this area?
Not the same reefs over and over every year. You can actually really noticeably tell the difference between a reef that had lots of reef fish before lionfish invasion, and then devastatingly half as many reef fish.
Lionfish consume more than 100 species of fish, including baby grouper and snapper, and fish that maintain the health of the reefs by grazing on algae. Eric Nelson says he's noticed that the hunts off the coast of Florida are starting to make an impact.
Once we started actively hunting lionfish, we noticed that the extinct populations are coming back.
During the past decade, lionfish have invaded the underwater habitats in the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean. Scientists expect that the lionfish invasion will continue to spread from North Carolina to the southern tip of Brazil. One reason for the rapid lionfish invasion is that they are fast breeders, laying more than 2 million eggs every year. Lad Akins oversees the Lionfish Program for Reef Environmental Education Foundation that is dedicated to marine conservation.
Well, the marine environment is a very complicated, interconnected system. And it's taken thousands of years for things to work their place out in balance. And when you introduce a new piece to that puzzle, it disrupts the entire system.
Because lionfish are not native to the Atlantic, they don't have natural predators here. Akins says when you combine that with their voracious appetites, lionfish wreak havoc on underwater habitats. And lionfish have been found as deep as 1,000 feet in the ocean.
With the impacts we're seeing in our shallow waters, we don't know how bad this is going to get. So our entire marine ecosystem is at risk. We could see extinctions of some species of fish. We could see severe degradation to coral reef environments if algae is not kept in check by the grazers, which lionfish are consuming. We could see impacts to our commercial fisheries, the grouper, snapper, shrimp, crabs.
Without natural lionfish predators here, the most effective way to control the population is for divers to catch and kill them. But they're not easy to catch. They don't swim in large schools, and they have poisonous spines that can sting.
This is safe. That's safe. We also have the right on that one and that one. Anything be 50 times worse than a wasp. That's about an hour after being stung. That was a total about a 3-month ordeal.
The dive community has stepped up to find safe ways to catch lionfish. One diver designed this plastic cylinder that he calls a zookeeper to store lionfish underwater and protect divers from being stung. Nelson and his team are using pool spears that he adapted and calls lionfish slayers.
What's great is that everybody is pitching in to address this. Divers are spending their time and money to go out and remove lionfish. Governments are putting money and effort into researching better tools and techniques.
Florida's Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has been running a public awareness campaign about the lionfish threat and contributing prize money to derbies to catch them. As this lionfish derby comes to an end, The dive teams head back to the dock for weigh-in.
477.
Vlad Aiken's organization, Reef, is one of the sponsors of the event. He says derbies can help scientists better understand the species.
Every individual lionfish that's collected is measured because that information is very useful in looking at impacts and populations. And then samples are made available for researchers that are hoping to better understand lionfish.
Some fish is also donated to local restaurants to create a human appetite for lionfish. Chef Andreas Avayu at Piccolo Restaurant in Fort Lauderdale says his customers line up for tables when the specialty item is on the menu.
Grill it, saute it, bake it. It's like its flavor. It's really versatile. There is no right, there is no wrong. It's one of those fish that just is.
One of his favorite recipes, lionfish tacos. And
Delish.
fishermen have noticed that catching lionfish can be profitable. Commercial fisherman Paul Varian says demand is increasing and even Whole Foods sells them when available.
They've become a pretty big part of my income. Like the last year or so, everybody finally figured out that the guys who buy from us, the restaurants, the consumers, everybody likes them and it's worth it. For, everybody's making money and the consumer's happy at the end. So now the price has gone up, demand's gone way up. I have people calling me, I don't even know who they are, begging to buy lionfish. I'm like, sorry, I'm just one of the people I've been telling to for years. But so if I could shoot 1,000 pounds a day, I could sell it.
As the results come in from the weigh-in at this derby, some people are tasting lionfish for the first time.
Scuba diver, and I've seen them underwater for a long time, and everybody's been telling me it's a nice, light, white, crispy fish, and very mild flavor.
Vlad Aiken says popularizing lionfish cuisine may be the best way to control the problem.
Here is a fish, lionfish, that needs to be removed. So consuming lionfish is the best possible option. Eradication is not on the table. Lionfish are simply too widespread, too deep, too inaccessible in some areas for us with our current tools and technologies to remove every last one. So what we're left with is something akin to weeding the garden.
Cool. So we have a sense of them, right? This, if anybody's really interested in, there's a little longer story about them, but there's an article kind of showing these are tomtate. I hadn't heard of that term before, but they're grunt, the common name grunt, and they're, tropical reef fish. And this was just an article that shows, their annual abundance versus the stage of lionfish invasion, and their numbers have declined as a function of lionfish moving into the area. And then again, what they discussed in the movie, there's a huge group. They actually call themselves invasivores. They're people that actively seek out invasive species that have been harvested, and will feed. We'll try and have them be a large part of their diet. There's cookbooks that are out there and all that kind of stuff. So now that we sort of have the background on the species we're going to be, working with, the learning objectives are really, let's explore population growth. Let's just kind of be able to visualize exponential and logistic growth and then apply it to the lionfish story and to another story in the homework assignment. So there is an interactive module. If you guys are on the Moodle site, you want to click on that, and I can actually just paste it into our chat. Okay, so then everybody's going to have it up. And then if you scroll down a little bit, this is what our simulator is going to look like. You're going to, change your N, your R, maybe the carrying capacity. Here's the lionfish assignment. So my recommendation is we've got our, simulator up. Let's open our assignment. When you click on that, this will show up. Okay. And it's going to give you a little bit of background, how we link it to lecture, the introduction, which is stuff that you've seen in the video and what I spoke of, where they're from, our learning objectives. And then here is what we need to do today. So we're going to first look at exponential growth. Okay. We're going to, click on the module, read a little bit, take a look at what the exponential growth model is, and then we'll click on the simulator for exponential growth, and we'll just play around with it, change some of the numbers, try and make a visual that shows, you know, hardly any growth where the curve looks flat, change a couple variables. Can we see slow but accelerating growth? Change a variable so that we crank up our growth, and then we'll apply it to this exponential growth to the lionfish data, and see over time, year 1, 2, 3, 4, given a growth rate of 0.95, and starting off with 2 individuals as our N0, we'll see what the trajectory should be in the years that follow. So let's kind of work through some of this together, if you guys are on board with that. So you'll see here's the exponential growth model, here's the logistic growth model, and basically, you know, there's just some overview basic stuff, right? Population dynamics, how the N changes over time, and we know these are all the good reasons why we study populations. And we have models that we've been covering in lecture that will talk about them. So if we click on the exponential growth model, it is going to give you a lot of background info, which is just nice review, right? So we've got a continuous exponential growth model. The dNdt equals Rn. That's old hat for you guys, right? Where we're looking at the, you know, per capita growth rate and your population size. We also see this discrete time model, which is a variation, which is our n sub t equals n0 e to the rt, right? That's just what we did for the homework, okay? And there's an example here with bacteria. If we click on that, there's a little video. You don't have to watch the video, but E. coli, you know, grows very rapidly. And they just gave us an example here. So, you know, you start off with an N0 of 2 bacteria. Ideal lab conditions, you've got an R of 2.45 per hour. Setting it up in this equation, 2 times E to the 2.45 growth rate times 1 hour, right? Just like we did for homework, gives us 23.2 bacteria. So that's the estimate, okay, for that next time period. Then they later show, and here's where there is a typo actually, and so it's not just me, right? They can then take this N and plug it in here. So your R, your growth rate was 2.45 per hour, and your N is this 23.2. They wrote 2.32. And when you multiply the 2.45 times the 2.32, you get a 56.8, which is your growth rate. You know, the change in population size over change in time, the population's growth rate, okay? The R here is the per capita growth rate, but the population's growth rate is that dNdt, change in population size over change in time. So anyways, I just wanted to show you how that applies. We're not really going to be fiddling around with that, but it's just something, you know, to note, and they give some more examples. And again, they just break down all the things that you have been playing around with. Population's growth rate, per capita growth rate, population size originally, you know, time, so on and so forth, okay? So having oriented to that and understanding, you know, what the growth model is for exponential growth when we have unlimited resources, we can now go to the simulator, okay? And if you click on that, you guys should see something like this, and you can just play around. So, you know, you can go over to the initial population size N and you can crank it, right? So this is exponential growth when your population is big. You could also increase your growth rate, see how that plays with things, right? So increasing your growth rate, anything above 0, right? Little r is 0, or bring it all the way down to 0. You bring it all the way down to 0, right? That's when growth is stable, right? If you made it negative, that's when growth declines, right? And you could run this for, you know, this is a time of 0. What if we did, you know, 1? What if we changed it to 2? What if we changed it to 3 or 23? Right? And you can see that it's changing, and it's giving you this dashed line is basically showing you, it's giving you the slope. which is going to help get to the population's growth rate. So some of the things you're going to need to note when you tweak these things, okay, will be what's the N and what's that population's growth rate, the DNDT. Okay, so those are the two things that you're really going to have to report in that homework assignment. Now I want to call your attention again, you can change your time this way too. Okay, but call your attention down here. Remember, we usually, you know, on the logistic curve, we have the sigmoid curve, and then there's that like hump shaped curve where we look at growth rate as population size increases. We can do that, look at growth rate as N increases for exponential growth as well. It's just something I haven't included. So you can expand this graph and you can take a look at, you know, the population's growth rate, DNDT, how that changes, which again, for logistic, it's usually a hump shaped curve. But for exponential with an R that is positive, it's going to look something like this. Okay. So again, you can fiddle around with the simulator and you can see how that population's growth rate changes. It's right here too. It's the dashed line. You kind of can see it happening up here too. But I just wanted to let you know that it is there. So let's go back to the homework, because this is, you know, something that we can kind of at least get you clear on, so you can do on your own. All right, so really this is just this part here, you know, we've just gotten into the simulator for exponential growth. And then I ask you, right, go through and do some playing around like I just demonstrated, right? Try and bring it down so that it looks flat. What did you do, right? Just, you can jot it down. This isn't anything, that's not really part of what is being graded, okay? How do we make it, you know, have slow growth? How do we make it have rapid growth? Then you go down to part 2 here, and this is really where we start kind of addressing those questions. So do note, you know, put a little note here what you've done to make that happen. Now, part 2 is actually accessing this article, and we've pulled an image from this article, this Cote and Smith. It's also posted, it should be posted on the Moodle site if you wanted to follow up and read it. So this Cote and Smith 2018 article is about the lionfish, okay? So there's real data. And the question then is, you know, they surveyed in the Bahamas in 2004, their N0 was 2, fill in the chart below, use the exponential simulator and predict these population things, right? Use an R of 0.95. So they want you to report your N, they want you to report your DNDT, they want you to do it after year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? So let's go back to the simulator. We can reset the simulator. Okay, so we're baseline again. Now remember what we said, the original population size was 2, right? Our growth rate was supposed to be 0.95, okay? So 1 year later, so here's what we're looking at, right? 1 year later, time 1, whoops, not 11, 1, okay? So a time of 1 year, your N is 5 and your DNDT is 4.91, okay? So again, in that homework, that's what you report. 1 year later, in 2005, your N, whoops, sorry guys. I didn't just lose it, did I? Apparently I did. 2. So your N is 5 and your DNDT is 4.91, okay? N is 5, 4.91. Now go out to 2 years. So your time is 2. Now we're at 13 and a population growth rate of 12.7, right? So crank it out for the rest of those time periods, okay? $35 and 32.84 for your growth. Okay, so you want to go up those 5 years. Good. So, you know, you can kind of predict that look how, you know, the growth rate is really cranking the more years we go. Once you get to a certain N, it really kicks it up a notch. Right? You can see how that trajectory would really take off once they've gotten past that Ali effect. Remember, we talked about the Ali effect, them not having a ton of them to be able to mate, but then as soon as you get past that, you start cranking. Okay, any questions on that? That answers your question 4. Okay, so we'll scroll down to question 5. So now you've got your model estimates, you've just filled all this in, and now look at the data from the graph that Cote and Smith put together, okay? And you can see that from 2004 to 2006, it's very low growth, and then it starts really kind of cranking around 2007, where it peaks in 2008, and then declines to sort of a range around what might be a K, right? Right, we talked about the plateau and how sometimes you can overshoot and undershoot, okay? So, you know, question 5 says, how does your model estimate compare to the field data collected by Cote and Smith, okay? So take a look at the N in 2005, 6, 7, so on and so forth. This is, you know, N versus time. How does your N compare to the N that you're seeing here over time? Okay, does it match up pretty well with that simulator? And then you can be thinking about, you know, the growth rate, the slope, but we're really just kind of, you know, thinking about how fast that population's trajectory is starting to shoot up. Does it match what you're seeing in your findings? Any questions on that? That's just kind of a sentence or two to answer that one. Thumbs up. Let me see. Everybody okay? Okay. Zoe, okay? Mia, good? Yeah, everybody's good. Okay. All right, so now we'll move on to the logistic. Okay, there's nothing more in that simulator, as I mentioned. You can kind of play around with it a little bit, and we can go back up to the top here, and we could go over to the logistic growth model, where we can again get a little refresher, right? The introduction here. The logistic growth model happens, you know, more commonly, and it's because our resources tend to be limited, and so we tend to see that sigmoid growth, especially as we get crowded, right? Intra or interspecific competition resulting in that crowding occurring a little bit more frequently. So the term density dependent suggests that we're working with, you know, limited resources, and that we probably are dealing with logistic. There again is the continuous and the discrete model, which we've covered. And you can see here, this is an equation. It's just another variation of the equation that you're comfortable with. So your change in your population size over your change in time, or the population's growth rate, is your per capita growth rate times your population size, and then that slowing factor, carrying capacity minus N divided by K, okay? And we're not going to belabor it. I'm not having us solve, you know, like we could have plugged and chugged into here just like we did for the homework assignment. Don't worry about that. I'm not having you guys do that. But there is another way, you know, another arrangement, another way you could do it, okay? As another example with bacteria, nothing that we need to go into, but we can go to the logistic growth model. Now, you'll notice that it's looking similar. There's an N0, an R, a time, but now we have a carrying capacity, okay? And also down here, we can expand and we can look, oh, that looks familiar, right? This is your DNDT, your growth rate. As population size increases, this is what we would expect. Early on, slower growth, halfway to K, you know, max growth as we get lower growth, and as we get higher in density, you know, lesser growth as we approach K, okay? So the homework then asks us this. Given the data in the previous lionfish sighting figure, so this is question 6, okay, we can pull it down here. What would be an appropriate carrying capacity to include in a logistic growth model for lionfish? Okay, so look at this graph, right? Kind of looking like our sigmoid curve. And if you guys had to pick where a K would be, what would the N be that is K, right? What is your population size? That would be your K estimate. Okay. And then it asks you, how does your population's growth rate change in relation to N? Well, you can answer that by going back to the module and looking here, right? Here's your dNdt and here's your N. And you can explain the trend that we, typically speak about, right? We talked about that in class. That's just kind of a broad generalization. And then from 2004, which is our first year, to 2006, our third year, when the population size and density is small, okay, so let's look over on the graph. From 2004 to 2006, right, our population is not growing very much, right? So it asks you, when that population density and size is small, the population growth rate is, and then you have to choose one of these three options. Is it greater than the growth rate for the population in 2008 to 2010? Okay, let's just kind of look here on the data set. So from 2008 to 2010, we're in this window, right? Think about what it's like to be up high in population size. What's your growth rate like when you're up high like that, right? And then how does it compare to the growth rate that you would have here, okay? Or is it less than what the growth rate is in 2008 to 2010, right? Or is it about the same as the growth rate from 2008 to 2010? So basically, take a look at when your initial population established itself. Take a look at it, once it's been here for a while and is at this, higher density scenario. And is the slope, is that population's growth rate the same, less than, greater than? And again, you can draw yourself back down to this kind of an equation, right? And think about, this is low population size, this is high population size. And you could simulate it a little bit up here, plugging in your numbers. You have a sense of your carrying capacity, your growth rate. You can change your time, right? You can change your time to the early year, right? And then change it to the later years, right? Your carrying capacity you've estimated, and see, is that dNdt the same, right? You can compare it that way if you want. All right, so you just need to circle A, B, or C there. And then which of these best explains the low population growth rate between 2004 and 2006? So this is something, again, going back here. Between 2004 and 2006, we don't have many lionfish around, right? And so what best explains low population growth rate in those early years? Is it that predation on lionfish is at a peak? Is it the number of individuals to reproduce is low? Is it that few food resources are available? Or that we have a lot of disease and parasitism? Okay, so again, you can pick one that you feel is the most appropriate. And question 10 here, choose all the following that explains your low population growth rate in the later years, 2011 to 2013, when your population size and your density were high. So let's take a look. Let's go back to that graph. 2011 to 2013, okay? Growth rate is pretty stable, right? It's kind of flat if we were to fit a line here. What explains why the growth rate in those years would be what it is? Is it that predation on lionfish is at a peak? Is it we don't have a lot to reproduce? Is it there's not a lot of food for them? Or that there could be a lot of disease? Pick any that apply, okay? So there could be definitely more than one answer here. Again, 2011 to 2013, they are well established. Their numbers are high, right? What are the things that regulate, right? When you're at a high density, we tend to have regulatory factors that will, be in place. And what of those, might you be seeing here? Okay, part 4, just a few more questions. All of these things here were from our population regulation lecture, right? All the things, all these factors that will regulate a population: competition, predation, disease, social behavior, the stuff we talked about, like us getting stressed, our cortisol levels increasing, right? Now, take a look at this Holdridge et al. Article figure, okay? We're looking at your per capita growth rate, your little r, as a function of your density and your n density here, okay? So let's look at question 11. Evidence from this graph, use evidence from the graph to make a claim about how your population growth rate is affected by initial cell densities. So what is the trend? Growth rate versus that initial cell density, right? When we look at high densities versus low densities, what's our trend that we see with your growth rate? So just one sentence there. And then your question 12, how does resource availability impact it? Remember, we had a visual today. If we added more resources to the aquarium, the paramecia's carrying capacity increased, right? So how does resource availability affect your population's growth rate in the study? You can see it by the colors here, okay? When we have high resources versus when we have low resources, what is the trend that we're seeing? Okay, now question 13, I added this sentence, this little phrase in here, okay? Other than food, what other resources, what other things, think some of the stuff we talked about with niche today, what other things do organisms compete for, right? Besides the food that they're eating, what else would they compete for that could affect these protozoa, okay? So again, it could be multiple things. And then finally, now we apply this Holdridge article to the case of the lionfish. And this might take, a couple minutes for you to answer, a little bit longer than some of those original ones, right? What density dependent factor? So again, any of these, right? And any of the others that we've talked about that could be influenced by high densities. So choose some factor that you think could affect lionfish populations. We even watched some of those examples in the video, right? Outline an experiment that you could conduct to determine whether this factor could limit or regulate the lionfish population growth. Okay, what would you do to test it, right? So, just a few sentences. What would be a good experimental design? What is that factor that you think is limiting, keeping them sort of at that level population size, and how would you test it? Good. Okay, so again, if you are looking for that, if you are looking for that module, right, go to your lionfish overview. I've got it right here, okay? If you're looking for that assignment with those embedded graphs from those articles and stuff with the questions we just went through, it's right there. Plug and chug some of those values in, fill in the charts, answer those questions, and pop it in the Dropbox. Any questions? A good one, right? Good. Well, go enjoy your day, you guys. I'll stay on if anybody wants to, chat a little bit longer about anything. But if you need me, I would say, feel free to shoot me a message. I'll probably stop the Zoom after everybody kind of closes off here. And if anyone needs me directly, you can email me and I'll send you a direct link. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
I just had a question because sometimes I feel like a little bit of a psychopath when I think about this and sustainability. So no one really talks about the fact that humans are animals.
Yeah.
Do we have a carrying capacity? Are
Yeah.
we at carrying capacity? And then things like coronavirus happen, and I'm like, okay, so disease is starting. Like, it just looks like we're reaching a point, but no one's like gonna talk about it. Is that like a thing? Like, am I like, is that real?
No, it's totally a thing. And it's one of those, it's also, you know, like, there are certain countries that restrict the number of children,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, there's a favorite kind of a gender shift. And so, you know, some Asian countries are faced now with a real worry that they have a not 50-50 sex ratio, right? And and that's going to be a problem long term for their whole
Yeah.
culture and everything, right? So yeah, it's a delicate subject because like telling people what they can do, but it's totally, we are animals. Like you said, our populations are just like the moose and the wolves. When numbers get too high, when climate's out of whack, when many things are kind of happening all at once, when we deforest the habitat, it puts us in closer contact to these disease vectors, right? Like, you know, they think that coronavirus is you know, was perhaps, you know, picked up, you know, through the bats, right? Well, we're deforesting a lot of the habitat that these, you know, fruit bats and whatnot are using. And our villages and our markets are getting in closer contact. You know, there's over exploitation, right? There's these markets, these meat markets where you can go and buy all these exotic animals, and, you know, bodily fluids are mixing across species. And that's where a lot of these zoonotics will jump, right? They'll jump across species, and people are congregating there. And so, you know, they're still digging into the original origins of it, but these are all parts of it, you know, and so, yeah, there's oftentimes, you know, worry that, you know, there's stuff out there that, you know, once we get to a certain point, we're starting to feel these tipping point effects. You know, there's a lot of us out there. We travel all over the place, right? We disperse.
It's a really
these
morbid
diseases.
thought, but like,
Yeah.
is there research going on about that? Like, have you seen anything about that where people are like carrying capacity, humans? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I've read some of the classic papers. I think in my population and community ecology class, I had included it a couple times. There's a controversial guy that talks about how it will reset. We will.
'cause no one wants to
reset
hear
will-
that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Nobody
Yeah,
wants
and that's
to-
why it was like, oh gosh, you know, he's really telling us this. But there was recent articles that I might have pulled one and put it in the demography, the links to the demography articles. You know how I usually, you know, give you some suggested ones. There have been a couple that have popped up recently that talk about how COVID has reduced the life expectancy.
Yeah.
And in particular, it's focused on a certain demographic. So African American, Latino groups tend to have this, you know, be an impact a little bit greater than others. But yeah, I mean, it's totally applicable to humans. And I'm sure there's research out there, but it's, you know, it's one of those things where it is controversial.
Yeah.
And I don't read, you know, I don't read those kinds of journals. I don't,
Right.
you know, I'm reading like Journal of Ecology and
Right.
Ecologia and stuff, but those aren't some of the ones that I peruse. But I feel like it would be an article for Nature or for Science, or, you know,
Okay.
for some of those deeper ones. I if you're curious, you know, I would do some researching. I know I found more recently some ones that talk about pollution and climate and COVID, you know, and I know there's been some research in, I think it was in China or Japan, where just everybody being in lockdown has, you know, reduced the amount of, you know, pollutants in the atmosphere. But there's also studies that talk about how that plays into life expectancy too, because there are certain countries that have such poor air quality that it tends to shave, you know, 2 to 3 years off their lifespan. And, you know, if you are able to reduce that, you know, you could be extending people's lifespans. So this COVID lockdown, if things have cleaned up a bit, you know, might actually have turned some things around for people.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, anytime. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.
Okay, see ya.
Hi,
James?
Dr. Garneau.
Yeah,
Yes.
hey, what's up?
So really quick,
Yeah.
I think I just needed the push from you telling me that my draft or my report needed some work. Just because over the past few days, I was working on the results, abstract, and discussion, and it really kind of helped me, I guess, understand the importance of getting the detail in. So
Yeah.
just letting you know, because I know I was oh my gosh, I'll talk to you if I need anything, but I think I'm in good hands, because it's I took a lot of your critiques from the beginning part, and I was all right, before I or I was let me edit the beginning, and then now that that's all edited, I was let me start, I was let me
Sweet.
finish with my results and everything.
That was good.
But I really incorporated kind of a lot what you said, so I think I'm on the right path.
Okay.
So I'll probably have it to you by the end of tonight, or by
Yeah,
tonight,
no,
or
and
early.
don't push if you need a little bit extra time. Remember, this is all a learning thing, and like I said, I have been very pleased to be able that you guys gave me, because this doesn't happen all the time. You guys gave me a very good sized draft. Even if you were missing certain aspects, you gave me enough that I was able to build in good feedback. So you're going to have you guys are going to have maximized your points for the final revision, because you know exactly what was missing. So good, I'm glad. And again, I don't know how much experience you have with science writing, but I didn't want you to go into the psychological, oh my God. When you see all that red, it's
right. I think so. It's kind of funny. So I think, okay, so I took, I don't know, I mean, you probably do know, but do you know Dr. Foose, Colin?
Yeah.
So I took his upper level, it was that, it's almost I guess it's kind of the senior level research, the science research, or it's environmental science
Seminar.
Yeah, anyway, so we did have to write a scholar, he wanted us to write, for our final project was a scholarly article, as if we were the scholars. But the funny thing is we weren't working with data, we were kind of working with our own thoughts and our own ideas about environmental science, because I'm a planning and management in environmental science, so we were working more with well, I guess we work theories here, but we didn't have raw numbers to do, and we didn't do trials and stuff. So this feels a lot more actual sciencey, which I enjoy more, because it's because theories and ideas are easy, those are just kind of things you have to think about, but when you're working with numbers and experiment, you need to understand it, I guess. I don't know. So it's it's kind of been good, because this is really opening me up, I guess, to lab reports and scholarly articles.
Yeah.
So it's really helpful. So
You're joining the dark side.
Yeah. Yes,
oh, that's
I
good
am.
to hear. Yeah, there's there's two there's the primary literature, which is novel research, where you collect your own data and design your own experiments, and then there's sort of the social science end, where I think your field is, where a lot of the papers, there may be interviews, and they can code the interviews using some of the programs that Kim, have you been in Kim Coleman's class, right? She codes her interviews and stuff. So there is a sense, that it's kind of like it, but a lot of it is summarizing other people's findings in this kind of a review paper format. And so, when I teach seminar, students have to write a review paper, and I'm teaching conservation now, and they have to write a term paper on a conservation subject. It's very different than writing a lab report. So I appreciate that. And again, you are not, red is my color. I actually red ballpoint pens, they suit. So, I just wanted everybody to know that I tend to, be give a lot of comments, and so it makes it look very red, but it's really, a lot of it is sometimes just oh, your paragraph was just misplaced, so I've pasted it up above and it makes it red. And so, sometimes it can be, more scary than it really is.
Right. Also, I'm so sorry, one more thing. Again, it's just because I'm also a nerd with environmental science, and I really am addicted to it. But so I guess because I know you do GIS work, right? Like, or
Yep.
you have in the past. So like I currently, okay, I'm obsessed with GIS and it like sounds so crazy, but like I haven't declared the minor yet, but like I took intro already with Eileen and then now I'm taking GIS applications with her again. But like I was just wondering, because like I guess I didn't really realize that you can use like ecology and GIS like together. So I
Yeah.
guess like, because like when you mentioned, like you were like, oh yeah, I use GIS, and I was like, what? I was like, hold on. I was like, I understand GIS is like meant for like, you know, mapping areas or seeing data in a different way, but I was like, I never knew she literally took like her own or like raw data and threw it onto GIS and programmed all that kind of
Oh
cool
yeah.
stuff. So is like, I guess my question is, it's like, we don't really do, like, we're not, I know you said like, we're not going to do GIS in here just because it's like, this isn't a GIS class, but like, is that something that happens within ecology or within like environmental science itself?
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So for example, I don't know if you've had class with Dave Franzi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know if he used GIS in his class.
Well, I took geology with him because but I haven't had, like, I know he always would plug geomorphology and
Yes.
always tells us to, yeah.
Okay. So, planning, you know, like you can plan for where the streets are going to be and where you need your fire hydrants to be, so you can use it in planning. In wildlife, a lot of it is the collar data. So, you know, I collared the moose, we collared the bear,
Right.
and then the satellites are collecting locations every 5 minutes. And when you immobilize the bear again to get the collar off, you can plug the collar into the computer and it
Right.
downloads into an Excel sheet. But what might be interesting for you, I have, and you know, the Spark presentation I gave for Squirrel Mapper and how there were pictures of the students doing GIS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were not, I guess the year before COVID hit, I redid Squirrel Mapper so that you guys in intro ecology could do some GIS. So all the extraction of the habitat, the home range creation, all that stuff is step by step. I have a whole like 20-page. I think everybody but me is happy that we're remote now and we've made it easier. So I have that if you were ever curious about it. But one of the things I'll recommend to you, and this will be useful when we do the sapsucker lab, I'm going to have everybody go on to iNaturalist and log in or sign up for an account and install it on their phones. So I'm going to sign in and show you kind of how it works.
Yeah, I kind of jumped the gun. I literally, the day you mentioned iNaturalist, I like made an account already and I put it on my phone. So
beautiful, good. Yeah, because we're gonna need it. So yeah, this was me a few days ago. I was gonna say I can tell it's spring because I'm logging roadkill again.
Yes, you're like, oh.
Right, this poor little guy. So anyway, if I was, you know, curious about an organism, let's say the Virginia awesome. Okay, so I can click on the species, and now I'm going to see all of them that iNaturalist has logged. So they're just not here. Right? So if I want to do some GIS with them, why am I not seeing the observations? Here we go. Sorry about that. You gotta type in. You can get so much good data from these citizen science projects. Okay. So now there's 17,540 observations. I am one of the 3,419 observers, or I'm sorry. Identifiers are the people that do quality control, the nerds that are like, that's totally an opossum, and then send you an email. The observers, there's over 9,000 people that are logging the roadkill. So you could type in any species in your Explore, which is where I am, and then you can go to filters And you could say, I only want the ones for this year, and I only want the ones from Danielle. So you'd put my code here.
Mhm.
Or I only want the ones from, New York, the state. And that, of course, the box is kind of blocking it, is going to reduce my size down to
Right.
something more manageable. Then you can go over to download.
Does it download a shape file?
Yeah, well, it downloads as, so firstly, when you hit download, this pops up.
Oh, goodness.
And I just scroll down to the very bottom right before it says create export, and where it says observation fields, I always choose all. So it's going to give me like every possible column that iNaturalist gives us. Then you hit create your export. And if it's a giant data set, you probably want to say, shoot it to me in an email, because this could take a while, right? But I just usually wait, because they're usually not too big. And it's gonna be an exported zipped file,
Zip file,
like a CSV
yeah,
Excel file. So then if from GIS, you must have this experience where you bring in an Excel file as an event.
An Excel table, right.
Make it an event theme, figure out what the X and the Y, latitude, longitude columns are. Make sure it's in, WGS 1984, unprojected. And then you can bring it in as a shape file, and you could, from the literature, you could Google what's the home range of an average, opossum, and you could go in and make a buffer for the home range.
Yep, I was gonna say you could put the New York raster, and then you could see, and then you could even like, oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and then so now I think did it just say, now I hit download. And now I've got a CSV zipped, and I can unzip it. So yeah,
cool.
then you bring it in, then you can buffer it, then you can use it to extract the habitat. If you
I was gonna say, you could see like habitat
raster.
And migration even.
Like,
Cool.
Distance to nearest, all that kind of stuff. So I use it a lot, and I really encourage people to get the GIS minor. In fact, GIS, when I first got here, GIS was not a requirement in the ecology major, but I use it so often in my upper level wildlife class. Like I have you guys do something similar to this. There's a repository called MoveBank, which is nerdy wildlife scientists that have collared animals or tagged birds or something with locations. They download, they upload their data, make it readily available, and you can download it. You can explore it in GIS. So you can download it as a shape file.
Cool.
So yeah, I
Is
have
that
do it a lot.
Wildlife management?
Yeah, it's wildlife ecology and management. It's the minor class where it's an all-day thing on Tuesdays.
I was gonna say, because maybe it was you who mentioned it. Because like and that's what I was wondering. I'm hoping, crossing every which finger I have, that like we'll be able to go back to in person next semester, but like, or somewhat in person, just because it's like I'm so used to like getting off of campus with my science classes, I guess you can say. And that's why I was so thankful when you were like, we're going to the woods. I was like, yes. So it's like, I'm so excited.
If I could keep my week straight. Yeah, we are going.
Yeah. But okay, cool. Because even, I just remember like there would always be so much time outside, and they kind of like, due to COVID, obviously, but somebody said, I think it was just like another friend in CES, who was just telling me that like the wildlife management is like a lot of like hands-on, and I was like, because I'm just trying to find more stuff, I guess you could say, because like I love my planning and management, but I'm like, I also just, because it's like I want to like know I guess just like be in the surroundings, because like I think that's what Kim really taught us, is like you could like, just because you're planning and management doesn't really mean that like you can't like do the sciences. She was like, I spend most of my time at like meetings and stuff for like just environmental science, but she was like, but I also have extensive research in like forest ecology and like forest research. So I was like, Right. So, okay, cool. I guess that was just my curiosity with GIS and ecology. I thought that was really cool. So,
Yeah, so
okay.
the way I run that class, and let me tell you, it better be face to face. You guys all better have your vaccines so we can be normal.
No, literally, my appointment's already scheduled, so I will be.
I cannot wait. It's going to be amazing. So yeah, even last fall, we did field work. So we had 3 vans. Some people who had cars drove, so we were distanced. We always handled our animals. So, day 1, we go to Point Roche and I set the turtle traps, and you guys all get to handle and mark and measure the turtles.
Cool.
The second day is our fish day. So I set little minnow traps hanging off of the bridges around Beekmantown and Plattsburgh. And then we either go to the river and shock the fish with a backpack shocker, or we go out on the boat. Depends on what Tim Myhook's class, if he's doing river or freshwater. It depends if we're on the lake or if we're in a river. And then we go and we trap the small mammals, and you get to handle them and put ear tags in them. And we do a night lab where we go to Twin Valleys, and we normally camp. So we normally overnight, but last year we just met at night and did what we needed to do. So we called for the coyotes and the owls, and we used the glow dust on any rodents that we caught to track their movements with the UV light. But we didn't overnight because of just worry. And what else do? We do some work at the fire. You get to pick your project. So, you get an opportunity if you really like amphibians, you could do a coverboard survey, or if you like the turtles, you could, take over the turtling project. I had a student I have bat detectors, but it's always the wrong season. I can't remember, James, you're not local, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So these bat detectors are pretty cool. They're little plastic devices that have on the one end of them, it looks like your charging cord for your iPhone.
Okay.
So you plug this little square thing into the bottom of your iPhone, where it charges, and it acts like a filter to bring in the ultrasonic sounds that these echolocators are playing, and it tries to figure out match what the species is on your, and you can get it it flashes on your phone what bat it thinks it is. But she started the project 2 weeks into the school year when things start to get a little bit chillier. So you really, if you want to do bat stuff, you kind of need to do it in the summertime.
In the spring or late spring, summer. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So,
yeah. I guess my mentality was I'm just, because it's so I'm a double major actually, and I'm a really odd double major. So I'm primarily a business student, but I'm also I declared environmental science just because it was my other interest, and my business professor was or my advisor was you're gonna need to do something else, because I came in with way too many credits.
Yeah.
So he was you're gonna need to do something else, and I was well, then why not take on another minor? So moral of my story is the reason I'm a hospitality management. So I combined. So I'm trying to do sustainability within hospitality, because it's hospitality is so it is great and I love it, but it's also very resource useful or resource not useful, and they tend to not be efficient with their technology and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I'm really interested in the GIS and more of the outdoor field, because it's I ultimately want to work at a place that is doing a lot of tourism and recreation ideology, making sure it's guests are well taken care of, but also that we're protecting our land, and we're being reusable and sustainable in our environment.
I love this. This is a cool marriage. I'm thinking of you on the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah,
making sure these resort our eco resorts are sustainable and stuff. But also, I mean, maybe you're one of the students to tap. I know a lot of our campus groups have kind of gone underground, not underground, but been quiet a little bit. But the CCER, has Eileen talked to you a little bit about that? Or Kurt?
No, what is that?
So it's the Campus Committee for Environmental Responsibility. And they're the ones that, it's a group of people, faculty, some students and administrators, and usually like buildings and grounds people. And you know, the green fee that you guys have on your bill?
Right. Yeah.
So that money can be tapped by anybody on campus. You just have to have a faculty mentor. So if you have an idea and you want to have it implemented, it's got some kind of sustainability kind of angle to it. You put this proposal, if you Google green grant or green fee, SUNY Plattsburgh, the form should show up. It's very quick. And it's a proposal. So for example, if you've been to the ACC or over towards Clinton Dining Hall, have you seen those like all-in-one bike fix-it stations?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, my student and I put together one because we wanted to work with Biketopia and make it more, you know, a bikeable kind of, encourage that. So we've got 3 of them, I think, on campus. So we got the funds through the Green Grant. In addition, the Ruger Woods trails, you know, the nature trail signage that might be out there, that was largely funded by a massive Green Grant, like $3,000 or $4,000 to pay for those signs, to get people out there to kind of engage the community in showing them how this woods is such a resource for, you know, recreation. So, you know, the stakeholders are the cross-country team, the dog walkers from the community, the ecology students that do research out there for the lab, and others like the botany group.
Right.
And so, you know, we had all these stakeholders involved and we got this grant to do this. So I feel like, and I think I posted on my Dr. Danielle Facebook page, SUNY ESF, and again, because you kind of this hospitality business angle, SUNY ESF posted something and I then bounced it to my Dr. Danielle Facebook page. They have gone like 100% plastic free, the campus.
Wow.
Yes. So I know we made some initiatives and they did it in like the downer and stuff, right? They got rid of like the straws and trays and all that kind of stuff, but they went like cold turkey. And I feel like, you know, maybe since we're like in this fiscal crisis on campus, it may be an opportunity for us, and they've already set up a playbook. And I think I wrote in the post, hey, is there any student that wants to kind of pursue this? You know, maybe something given your wheelhouse and your interests, you know, to make a move, to propose an initiative to maybe get that started and phased in. I know it's something we probably can't all in one do it.
Right.
You know, see what they did, read their playbook and see what they did to make it happen. I recall going to SUNY ESF with Kurt when we first started. He and I started around the same time. I remember we went to like a sustainability conference. It was a day and a half. And so we stayed in ESF's new like beautiful green buildings. And the food that was catered by the camp there for this event was provided by the SUNY Morrisville's. They're like an ag SUNY. So they've got like, you know, a restaurant. Well, you must know from your degree, maybe they have their own like restaurant and they have their own working farms and stuff. And it's a sustainable harvest and it's like farm to table. And so all the food that is, I think all the food, maybe not all, but maybe a good proportion in their cafeterias is like grown, sourced by them. And I don't know why, you know, we have a campus garden. I don't know why that can't be used more often in our, I mean, maybe it's a health and safety thing.
Right.
But it seems to me like we could be doing more of that kind of stuff, right? We have CEAS graduates that run and own and operate Fledging Crow, right? The CSA.
Right.
And why couldn't we connect somehow with them? And like, why do we have to be so beholden to Chartwell's, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was like another thing. And it's actually kind of funny. Like I've heard a lot of students talking about it in regards to, you know, like us having, you know, CSAs and like all these like safer farm to table things. And speaking of like farm to table, like people are saying like, since it's in regards to a building literally, but like Banks Hall, like since there's like a lot of like, there's like, I also work for housing. I'm a CA in the dorms, but like there was like talk of like, oh, like Banks Hall is just, we're just gonna like put it out of service. And then I heard that they were gonna like tear it down and then just like turn it into a parking lot. But then like I literally was talking to actually it was Chase, who's in our class.
Yep.
Or whatever. We were like, why can't we just turn like Banks into like a garden center or like this really, I mean, it's probably expensive and I got it, but like it would be really cool to like just have like that nice place, like that nice, like environmentally friendly building on campus where it's like, there's like not like, it's not like walls, like there's a nice like little like sky roof and like, maybe you could have like, because like isn't the campus garden kind of far, isn't it, by the high school, or it's by the high school, right?
It's over
so
in
like
yep.
Right, like being able to just like move that to like such like a prominent, because like Banks is in such a central location compared to like where like Hawkins is and like that side of campus and where like all the dorms are. So like I was like, we were talking about like trying to come up with a proposal because it's like, we don't need another parking lot. What we need is like a nice space for like students of really any, like, it doesn't really matter the major, but like a nice like space where students can go and like, feel, I guess, feel like within the environment, but also just in a really like sustainable and eco-friendly building. I don't know. I just feel like that's something that we lack on campus. And it's something that like, again, for business side, it's something that like, if we had that for advertising to school or to like, the general public and to like the school or prospective students itself, like that would be such like a, oh my gosh, I want to go there to experience that. And
how many floors? How many floors is Banks?
Banks has 9 floors technically, but I figured that like if we wanted to do something like this, like we can like essentially it would probably be like a lot, but like essentially it would be like, and again, I don't know if I'd be here in my time frame, but like it would be really cool to like kind of, I maybe even like shorten the building a little bit just to make it like not as much of a project, but really just give it more of like that open feel versus just like a dorm building feel, and like instead of having like private floors and like private rooms, like really turn it into kind of like, I don't know if you've been in like Au Sable or whatever, but like Au Sable's so open and like yes, there's the classrooms, but like they have a nice like
green
open
roof.
Yeah. They have the sky roof. Like, I don't know. It would just be so cool. And because I don't remember her name, but a girl in our class, you talked about it. I think it was like last week. Yeah, maybe it was like how the mayor was so like willing to like do all these changes to the waterfront. I said, that's amazing in itself for recreation and tourism purposes. But I was like, and I love that because that's another draw why people are going to come up to Plattsburgh. But here's another one, like giving an environmentally friendly like building. I don't know. It would be such like a cool student center too, with like, people from like Myers would have like a cool like space that they can use. And then you'd have like the CES students who would have like a whole like, I don't know. It would just be a really cool initiative. I think that like, I wish, I don't know. I guess it's like hard because it's like, I want to push that, but I think there's such a fear of it, like not getting momentum that a lot of people turn away from. So I think I just got to do some research, but I definitely am going to try to bring it up to at least Stephen Housing and just be like, look, like this, instead of just getting rid of another building, like this might be a really cool opportunity. So
I know we can't even buy batteries.
I know.
That's how bad, we can't, we have no supply budget or anything, but I was thinking, as you were talking about that, club space, places where students can gather. In addition, like maker space, I know the robotics group and the physics group, with their 3D printing and stuff, they have a lab, but like to have a spot where people could kind of create, whether it's art or robots or whatever, I mean, that's such a, or just yarn, like, they're crafting, painting. I mean, I think it's great. It's just, again, fiscally, I don't know that our schools do it. But I think it's definitely worth having conversations. Definitely.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it'll, I'm definitely going to bring it up. I'm kind of like drafting a little, like, it's really rudimentary, but I'm drafting like a little like thing right now. It's in its really early stages. So, but yeah, I'm definitely trying to like bring it up. I just feel like there needs to be like, I don't know. I just feel like we need to offer, that type of thing, I guess, where it's like, you know, open for a certain period of time. And it's just like a space on campus. Cause it's like, everybody like loves the classes that we have on campus. And I think like our education does really well at Plattsburgh. I think like the thing that we're lacking is like student involvement and like student like
The social
commitment
side.
to each other. Yeah, exactly. Like I think like having a space like that on campus, because like the ACC is cool, but like I feel like the ACC is in like a weird layout too, that it's like friendly enough, but also
they put lipstick on it, but they didn't really like fix the problem. It's not, you know, I go, you know what school when I taught at St. Lawrence, their student center is just amazing. It's got this grand, well, we have a grand fireplace too, but there's something, the feel about it. There's like a movie theater on one side, and then there's the fireplace gathering area with some TVs. The furniture is actually comfortable, you know, it flows right into like a co-op style restaurant that's not like Tim Hortons. You know, it just, it's a totally different vibe. And, you know, it'd be great if that kind of change could happen. But I encourage you to check out Google CCER, or Campus Committee for Environmental Responsibility. And Kurt may actually be in charge of it right now as the advisor. And then also the Green Grant. And look and see, I mean, maybe some of the things that are in your project, if you get the cold shoulder, maybe there's something you can pilot with a Green Grant that could then be like, hey, look what we did, you know, and look at how happy and the connections the students are beginning to make. What if we could scale it up, you know, with this situation that you're talking about?
Right. Yeah, I think I'm totally, and it's good too, because like Kurt's my advisor too. So it's like, that's super like helpful, because it's like I could just totally talk to him. But yeah, overall, I'm just kind of in love with environmental science, and it took me didn't take me a while to believe it, but like in high school learning about it, and I kind of was just like, yeah, like of course I respect the environment, but like what really pushed me was I took environmental 101, and like that was like, yep, I wanted to declare this as a double major. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I'm just really, I guess, passionate about like the changes that can be made. So and of course learning, because it's like every day I learn something new, whether it be through class or just my own like research and things. So so yeah, overall it's like so cool. It's kind of like, it's like funny, I guess, because like I love like the animal side and like the like species side learning, and then I also love like the really like rigid stuff like geology. I find like that kind of stuff super interesting. So I'm kind of like all over the place with my environmental science mind, because it's like, yeah, I just think it's super cool. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, I'm asking you to bottle that enthusiasm and love, and hang on to it forever.
Yes. I completely will. Don't you worry.
Good. All right. Well,
All right,
awesome.
thank
I'm
you.
glad that we could catch up. And
Yes.
if there's ever anything that you need and support for that, or brainstorming for things like that, let me know. Okay.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Dr.
All right. Have a good afternoon. See ya.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye.